We all know the Vikings, raiders, explorers, traders. But what if, instead of just raiding and settling in scattered pockets, they had consolidated their power to found a massive, unified kingdom right in the heart of Europe? Forget England, forget Russia for a moment. Imagine a Viking superpower emerging from the lands we now call France, Germany, and the Low Countries. So, how could this even happen? Let's set the stage. Picture the late 9th century. The mighty Carolingian Empire, Charlemagne's legacy, is crumbling. It's fractured by internal squabbles, with weak kings struggling to fend off relentless Viking raids along every major river: the Seine, the Rhine, the Meuse. In our timeline, the Vikings took what they could and often settled for tribute or land grants like Normandy. But in this alternate reality, a visionary and ruthlessly effective Viking leader, let us call him Bjorn Ironheart, decides that just taking the silver isn't enough. He sees a power vacuum, a rich, fertile land ripe for the taking. Instead of sailing home with his loot, Bjorn Ironheart uses his charismatic leadership to unite several great heathen armies. He's not just a raider, he's a state builder. He sees the Frankish weakness not as an opportunity for a quick payday, but for a permanent conquest. His strategy is brilliant. He doesn't just sack cities, he captures them, garrisons them with his warriors, and uses the river networks not just as highways for attack, but as arteries for a new kingdom. He secures the entire coastline from modern-day Belgium down through Normandy, creating a naval iron curtain. Paris falls, not just for a season, but for good. This new Viking kingdom, let's call it the Kingdom of the North Sea, or perhaps Vestria, would be a cultural and political earthquake. Initially, it would be a military-first society. The Viking elite, the Jarls and their Huskarls, would form a new aristocracy, ruling over the local Gallo-Roman and Frankish populations. The language would be a fascinating blend. Imagine Old Norse mixing with Old French and Old High German, creating a new Creole language that would dominate trade and administration. Cities like Paris, renamed something like Bjornsvik, and Cologne would become major centers of this new Norse-Frankish culture. But a kingdom can't survive on raiding alone. Our visionary King Bjorn knows this. He encourages his people to shift from raiding to ruling. They adopt Frankish farming techniques but improve upon them with their own efficiency. They reorganize trade routes using their unparalleled shipbuilding and seafaring skills to dominate commerce from the Baltic to the Mediterranean. The Norse sagas wouldn't just be about heroic raids anymore. They'd be epic tales of founding cities, of shrewd diplomacy, and of the establishment of a new dynasty. The legal system would be a hybrid too, merging the Viking thing assemblies with Frankish feudal law, perhaps creating a more representative, albeit still aristocratic, form of governance. The religious landscape would be utterly transformed. Instead of converting to Christianity bit by bit, this powerful, confident Norse kingdom would likely hold on to its pagan beliefs for much longer. Imagine great temples to Odin and Thor rising alongside old Frankish cathedrals. This religious tension would be a major flashpoint. The Pope in Rome would undoubtedly call for crusades, not against the Saracens in the Holy Land, but against the heathen Northmen in the very heart of Christendom. This would lead to centuries of brutal holy wars across France and Germany. Would the Norse kingdom eventually convert? Possibly, but it would be on their own terms, perhaps creating a unique syncretic version of Christianity that incorporates old gods as saints, much like what happened in other cultures. How would the rest of Europe react? The formation of this Viking superpower would send shockwaves everywhere. The remnants of the Frankish kingdoms, East and West Francia, would be forced to unite against this common enemy, potentially forging the identities of Germany and France much earlier and in a much more militarized way. England, without the constant threat of large-scale invasions from a unified continental Viking state, might have developed very differently. Perhaps the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms would have had the breathing room to consolidate more firmly, preventing the Norman conquest of 1066, because Normandy as we know it wouldn't exist. It would just be a province in the greater Viking kingdom. The long-term impact would be staggering. A technologically advanced, trade-oriented, and militarily formidable Norse kingdom in continental Europe could have kicked off an age of exploration even earlier. Driven by their innate wanderlust and superior ship technology, they might have reached the Americas and established colonies centuries before Columbus. and not just as a footnote in history, but as a concerted state-sponsored project. The entire colonial map of the world could be redrawn, with Norse settlements dotted across the North Atlantic. The Renaissance might have happened differently too, fueled by a different mix of classical knowledge preserved by the Franks and the pragmatic, adventurous spirit of the Vikings. So, a Viking kingdom in Europe wouldn't have just been a temporary change. It would have fundamentally altered the continent's religious, cultural, and linguistic DNA. It would have created a new center of power, shifted alliances, and set history on a completely different course. The world we know, the borders, the languages, the very idea of what European means, was shaped in the crucible of the early Middle Ages. Throw a powerful, unified Viking kingdom into that mix, and the result is a world that is both fascinatingly familiar and wildly, excitingly different. What do you guys think? Could a Viking kingdom have survived in the long run? What other ripple effects would it have had? Let me know your theories down in the comments. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this journey into alternate history, please hit that like button, subscribe for more, and ring the bell so you never miss an episode.